In an address before Tehrans Friday prayer sermon, the commander of Iran's law enforcement force, Esmail Ahmadimoqaddam, said on October 10th that Iran's security standards are different from world security standards. He said, quote,
"As far as security is concerned, we cannot just rely on world standards. Rather, our society needs a security standard in correspondence to our cultural, regional, and religious conditions."
Ahmadimoqaddam, who was speaking at a ceremony marking Iran's LEF week, began his remarks by addressing criticism that the manner of LEF's confrontation undermines the rights of citizens. According to Iran's semi-official ISNA news agency, Ahmadimoqaddam said, quote,
"These kinds of criticisms of the LEF and its plans are like compassion for wolves, as the LEF in principle defends the rights of the citizens and people and victims."
He also dismissed the view that the level of poverty moves in parallel with corruption, and suggested instead that unlike Western beliefs, it is wealth that leads to corruption. Ahmadimoqaddam said, quote,
"We imagine that poverty has direct correlation to corruption, but today the opposite of this is true in Western societies. As they become more well-off, Western societies are gripped with ever more corruption."
Iran's security chief also criticized the elite and writers for what he said was a lack of understanding of the fundamental differences between the East and West. In the West, he said, quote,
"Homosexuality and sexual deviances are considered a desired value, and this is why our president is ridiculed whenever he says that these deviances do not exist in our country. The difference between us and the West can be understood best in this way."
Emphasizing the need to fight homosexuality, however, Ahmadimoqaddam noted that one must not just try to fight against the symptoms of the problem, but rather address its roots. He said, quote,
"Surely if we don't pay attention to the roots, this will give birth to more crime, and that is why we must rely on cultural values as sure grounds for prevention of this crime."
He next said that the West has always been and is today conducting a cultural raid on Iran via its media, and this demands a decisive response. And yet, he continued, quote,
"Unlike a military attack where the casualties can be counted, and even revered if they happen to have been martyred, in a cultural raid, the casualties are not seen. Instead, they are causes of shame, to be driven out of society, as is the case of drug addicts."
Following these, Friday prayer leader Ayatollah Mohammad Imami Kashani thanked the efforts of the LEF and said, quote,
"The defense of ideas is the responsibility of the clergy, but the defense of moral behavior is the responsibility of the LEF."
Imami Kashani, an influential member of Iran's leadership affairs body, the Assembly of Experts, said, quote,
"The LEF must not allow itself to be influenced by other people's words or feel exhausted at performing its cultural duties, because the observance and protection of the behavioral ethics of the country, which is on the shoulders of the LEF, is of great value."